Good evening and welcome to Succession Planning, a Lions University course brought to you by the USA-Canada Lions Leadership Forum. My name is Lyon Budwall, and I'd like to welcome you to this evening's webinar and remind you that we are recording this session for those of you who may want to review the material at a later time, or for those who cannot participate live and will be able to watch and listen to the recording at a later time. Once we begin, you may be asked to respond to a question, or you may have a question yourself or have a comment. And you can do this by either typing your question in the questions pane in the panel along the right side of your screen, or by raising your hand and clicking on your hand so that you can be unmuted, giving you the opportunity to share verbally with the entire group. Assisting me this evening is Lion Terry Graham, Past International Director Terry Graham, who will be monitoring the questions area for us this evening and helping out. So Lion Terry, whenever you have a question or a comment in that box that you want to share with everyone, please jump in whenever you can. Succession planning is course number 202, a required course for the Lions University Master's Program that is designed to help Lions lead on the district level. And the Master's Program involves the completion of 10 required courses that you see on the left side of your screen, and at least 5 of the elective courses, which are shown on the right side of the screen. This is the Lions University website, lionsuniversity.org, and this slide shows a page in the bachelor's program listing the courses offered in that level. Now, the master's program page would have similar information but would include the courses particular for the master program. If you were to click on any of those courses listed on the page, you would then be taken directly to that particular course page, giving you all the details for that course, along with a link to register for the course and links to any course handouts and, of course, the course quiz. We even have a calendar page you can click on to see what courses are scheduled in the weeks and months ahead. This slide shows what a course page typically looks like. It lists the course number and name, gives a description of the course, shows you who the faculty member is, and gives you links to register for the class and any course materials. If you haven't already done so, you will have to create a separate username and password to get in to register for the course and have access to the quiz. And after participating in the webinar or watching the video of the webinar, you can click on the Mark as Completed shown with that red arrow down at the bottom. Click on that, and that tab will take you then to the next to the page, allowing you then to take the quiz. When you complete the quiz and submit your answers, you will instantly be given the results, and you can click on the My Account tab near the top of the page and see firsthand view of the courses you've completed in both the bachelor and the master level programs. Our faculty member this evening is Lion Dennis Finette. Lion Dennis is a past district governor from MDA, Ontario, Canada. He has been a presenter at numerous venues, including the USA-Canada Lions Leadership Forum, and more recently, he was our faculty member about a month ago for the subject of protocol, an elective course in the master's program. We are pleased to have Lion Denny with us again this evening, and with that, please welcome Lion Denny, and you can take it from here.
Thank you, Lion Bud, and thank you, Lion Terry, for assisting us this evening. Well, welcome, Lions. This evening, we'll be discussing the aspects and various processes by which we can successfully plan for the migration from one individual to another in the same role. Now, I hate to begin with a negative, but the one thing I'm going to remind you is that succession planning is not the same as recruitment. Though we will be touching on some recruitment facets of succession planning, that won't be our primary focus this evening. I think we can all agree that recruitment is at times an art, and it involves the convincing and the development of individuals to undertake leadership opportunities. That is a part of this process, but recruitment as per se will not be an overwhelming part of this presentation. The other thing I want to mention is that succession planning is presented this evening in a way that I visualize it, as well as members of our district team. And as it was pointed out, the master's program is oriented around district leadership and district management, district strategies, and knowledge development. So tonight we will be focusing on a process particularly suited for committees and committee chairs, as well as the leadership at the club and at the district. We'll get into that a little bit deeper as we go along, but it's very important to know that most of the information that is out there is geared around family succession in a business or succession planning so that you may permit another individual to run your business in your role. This is tailored more specifically around Lions, clubs, districts, and multiple districts. Now, tonight we're also going to endeavor to take a very general approach on the process of succession planning, and especially in terms of the responsibilities and opportunities within Lions. Let's understand that what we're looking at here is a process by which we can ensure that we build the foundation for others to follow, and that others that follow will recognize how they need to continue that process and build the foundations for their future. So now let's just turn to tonight's objectives on slide 7. To begin with, we're going to define the steps involved in a succession planning process. We're going to provide a flexible approach to candidate selection. We're going to review some of the resources and the personal development involved that are available to you and that need to be considered in the process. And then we're going to define the transition options and the support that you, either holding the role or involved in mentoring the new person, will need to provide at the conclusion of the process. All right, so let's take a look at what Webster's defines as succession planning. Webster's dictionary defines it as the coming of one person or thing after another in order, sequence, or in the course of events, specifically to the red highlighted items. We'll be focusing on items that relate to a person in a role, that is a role at the district or even at the club level. The other one is that it is after another in order, sequence, or the course of events. In terms of order and sequence, we all know that as part of organization, we have a gradual process of developing our leadership so that it follows in a particular order. That sequence is not necessarily one to follow, but the one thing that also comes into play is the course of events. And by course of events, what we attempt to look at is that the events themselves are predetermined, and as such, the following of a vice governor into a governorship is a set of sequence and course of events. All right, so now let's turn to the processes that are involved in succession planning. All right, succession planning, succession as a cycle. If we look at the top circle, the first one that is mentioned is called assessment. Now, assessment is essentially the role of the person holding that particular position or responsibility in assessing that role, in assessing the resources, the responsibilities, and various aspects, and in defining those in advance of identifying or seeking succession. The next one is that of selection, which is obviously the process of identifying potential candidates and individuals that seek to ascend to these positions. The third step is the development of the individual when the selection has been made. Now, in the development of the individual, we're also seeking outside influences. We're seeking resource and materials. But the one thing that we are seeking above all is a transition and the ability to communicate the essence of the role, responsibilities, and expectations for the individual succeeding the individual in place. Lastly, and an important factor, is transition. Although one might seem that all of this is transition, there is that key moment where one needs to understand that one needs to let go. And that's what we're going to talk about in section number 4. So let's look at number 1, which is assessment. In assessment, the first part that we would do is to define the role. Now, as an individual who holds that role, you may have a preconception of what the role entails. You may not even have assumed the role and believe you have an understanding of the role. But what we're looking at here in terms of succession planning is to take the opportunity while in the role, and when you feel you have begun to understand the role, is to define and create a formal definition of the role as you see it. That's not the perfect picture. It is your picture. You are painting a picture of the role, but it's a good beginning. Now, is there a formal definition on file? Have you been provided with a manual or correspondence or information or knowledge and training regarding the role? If so, it would be wise to have that as part of your assessment of what the needs are within the role. Also, what aspect of the role is different from that published definition, if you will? It's not always that everything outlined for a zone chair is actually the role of the zone chair within your district or your multiple in terms of your Council of Governors. What is different to it? Identify those differences and create documentation on the role. Now, what changes have you personally brought to the role? These you should itemize as well and be prepared to present those changes to your successor in terms that you may see, or you may ask that these changes be considered going forward. What aspects need to be reassessed? In every role as I have seen it, there are always aspects that change with time. They change with circumstance, they change with various other factors, and those should be itemized. So what you came to it, when you took the role, what documentation you developed on the role, what have you personally brought to the role, and what really, truly, and honestly needs to be reassessed. As you can see, this assessment portion on defining the role is your viewpoint. But it is essential that you document this, because if there was one question that was asked most of me when I was asking for individuals to chair various roles, various committees, when I was going to be governor, was, what does the job entail? Everybody knows the title, but what's the responsibility in that role? So now, let's move on to the next slide, which is defining the responsibilities. So what are the responsibilities and expectations? Though you might consider that defining the role defines the expectation and responsibilities, well, outlining the role doesn't really tell you much at times about what you are expected to provide. I may have been disconnected there. Was I disconnected there for a bit?
No, I got you online.
Okay. I'm a little new to this, so I'm trying my best. So when we look at these responsibilities, expectations, timelines, when are these due? It's important to provide that to individuals, especially in the case where the individual wishes to assume the role, wishes to have an understanding of the role, but then there are certain periodic responsibilities that may not be able to fulfill, and they may need some assistance. What challenge are also part of the role in terms of responsibilities? They may be the interplay with your role with others, and what traits are required to execute these responsibilities. If the particular role is timeliness as well as the organizational skills, this may be quite applicable to a cabinet secretary, one that needs to take proper minutes and document the events of the cabinet. This is not to say it's not a trait that's wished upon every member of cabinet, but that's, that is one of those traits that are required and not only preferred, but are really quite required to execute those responsibilities. And I want you to remember to provide your own experience in these matters. What responsibilities did you have? What are those going forward? And where do you go from here? The third slide on assessment is outlining the requisites. So we've dealt with documenting the role, we've dealt with timelines and responsibilities, but what does it really need in terms of an ideal candidate? What are the training requirements for that candidate? Is there a certain amount of knowledge required about particulars? So an example of that would be an IT manager. It would appear almost essential that a person have an understanding of technology as it is today. That doesn't mean they need an overwhelming capacity or a degree in computer science, but they would likely require some training to hold that position. I wouldn't suggest denying the position unless the understanding by the individual is that they think they can handle something that they don't know. We'll get into that a little bit in the selection. Are there any formal requirements to assume the role? Well, if we want to speak of a particular example, let's do this. Let's speak that I want to be first vice district governor. Well, to be first vice district governor, according to the Constitution, one has to have been previously elected to the position of second vice district governor. There are variants of that when situations arise, but for the most part, you know that the formal requirement, the existing prerequisite to assume the role, is that one be in the position of second vice district governor. So those formal requirements are also those that need to be outlined prior to seeking the available candidates. And can any of these requisites essentially be substituted, or can they be handled otherwise? I have a particular situation I'm willing to share with you, and that one occurred a few years back when the club president who was aspiring to be zone chair had not put his name forward for candidacy, and another individual was nominated by the district governor who had not been yet club president. A challenge was raised that, well, how can that person be a zone chair if they've not been club president? Looking at things, we realized that the requisite is essentially there to be a candidate for the position, but that the governor reserves the right to appoint. Now, we have things a little different in our district than other districts, and I'm sure you have all these differences as well. But then you take a look at that and you say, what's the right person for the position, and is the requisite required, essential, or optional? And that is where we actually have to take a look at this and see if maybe the requisites may be overlooked in a particular case. Sometimes requisites also become outdated, and I won't go into that, but if anybody has any thoughts regarding that matter, then please feel free to send us a question or a bit of information. Okay, are there any questions actually right now regarding the assessment process of the role? We'll just take a pause here and see if anyone has any questions.
All right.
No, I don't see any at all. There's no questions.
Muted.
Nothing at this point? Okay. Well, then let's move on. Let's move on to the second part. The second part of the process, and that is selection. Now, the first thing we need to admit to ourselves, especially if we're the ones that are holding the position, that it's not always the choice of the person in the role. If you may plan, you may develop the knowledge base, you may develop all of the documentation and all of the processes, but at times there are preferences by other individuals to hold the role. The most important thing is that the individuals that are selected as candidates for the role show an interest in the role. In particular, the candidates should possess some of the traits that are required to fulfill the role. So, let's take a look at this. You may not always be choosing the person in the role, but an individual show an interest in the role and should possess some of the traits is a beginning of a means by which you, as the individual providing mentorship, if you will, or information to the individual, can best assess the decision that was made to select the individual. It's also important that the candidates understand the process of assuming the role. Many times it's like, bye-bye, sayonara, have a good day. If the candidates understand the process of assuming the role as well as the definition, then it is extremely likely that the candidates will be responsive to your request for the consideration of the role. The candidates should also expect to be mentored. Now, it may not be you that will provide the mentoring. As an example, if you do not hold the role at present, it's possible that the individual in the role may be mentoring the individual. Let's say that you're the person who holds the role, but the governor in session coming in, the district governor-elect, decides that they would like someone else in the position. You may find that the individual currently holding the role wants to have nothing to do with it. But what happens there is that the governor or whomever needs to understand that that individual expects to be mentored. So in part, the candidates should expect this, regardless of how they accede to the role. And realize that that is important as a successor, that the successor needs to understand the process and all of this information so that they know that they will receive the proper training and support going forward. If we move to slide 14, we'll see that candidates, we need to establish clear metrics for their assessment. So what do I mean by that? Well, it's so easy for us to find a preferred candidate on the basis of who we know and not what they know. So we should establish clear metrics, and we should be very, very objective about our evaluation of candidates for the role. Now, I'm sure hands are going up out there somewhere saying, wait a minute, you're suggesting that I'm going to get candidates for the role. What I'm suggesting is that if the information is prepared and if the candidates are scrutinized, not face-to-face, but scrutinized and identified for their passion for the role, then there's a great likelihood that you will have many candidates for the role. But you need to identify and assess their capacity and capability very objectively. You also should assess their strengths and their weaknesses, because weaknesses at times may be overcome, and strengths, well, we can capitalize on that. You can also consult with your predecessor regarding the available or potential candidates. You see, if your predecessor had followed the process, had developed the documentation, had mentored you, and ultimately had given you the role and allowed you to blossom within that role, then they will have seen certain traits in you that they would evaluate in others, or they would see weaknesses in you that they would identify readily in others. So ask your predecessor as well as others about potential candidates. Also, evaluate these candidates on the basis of clear assets and liabilities. What do they bring to the role? What do they bring to the future of the responsibility? And what potential issues may arise? This is very important to, say, do plus-minus columns on candidates, because you may have put your heart and soul into something. You need to relinquish it at the time that you're developing a successor. And you really want to ensure for yourself and for the committee and for the district that the individual will take the role responsibly. All right. Are there any questions? We're going to turn to the
Denny, we have a question coming in from Kendra, wondering how many candidates should be selected.
Well, each particular role, whether it's a committee or for zone chair or for others, each particular role obviously has a very limited number of candidates. We know we struggle for people to succeed in the positions and to succeed others in those positions. I would say that it is not a question of numbers, Kendra. It is more a question of identifying people that would be suitable to undertake the responsibilities and the expectations of the role. I find that people in Lionism particularly will express their passion through the focus that they give to particular areas of responsibility. Mine was with leadership. I mean, it's not site conservation, it's not diabetes awareness, it was leadership of the organization. And others saw that in me and capitalized on it, if you will, and encouraged me to take on leadership roles. There were others at the time as well, and they assumed different roles. But the fact is, numbers is not the game, but quality and continuance is the thing of most importance.
Another question from AJ was the preparedness we have to be requirement for 3D. I think he means that they have 3 candidates in position for that. It's just a thought that he had. And Lena had one that says, is it wise to create a survey type form for candidates to complete when trying to select your cabinet?
Is it wise to create a survey type form for candidates to complete and trying to select your cabinet? I see the question now. Surveys are always a great resource. There are many people that will fill out a survey that will not answer a question or hold a conversation. They'll fill out the information because they'll show their interest in the different areas, and then it all depends on your interaction in the selection process as to whether you can see their passion and see if they're appropriate for the role within either your cabinet or your governor's cabinet. I like this, that is it wise to create a survey? Always, always, especially to the general population, because it is indeed surprising to find individuals who have never expressed outright interest in a particular responsibility, and they'll just say, yes, they're very much interested. So putting it to paper is sometimes a lot easier than holding conversation and saying, I would like to. Yeah, I agree.
Good. I think that's about it right for now, Denny.
Thank you. Okay, so we can move on to the next slide. Always think of it as providing an opportunity to candidates, and that is indeed when I was talking about passion. So when you're involved with selection and you're discussing the opportunity with the candidates, always assess their response to the discussion about this opportunity. This can tell whether the passion is in the individual to assume that responsibility. If asked, provide a written role definition. As I said before, many would come to me and say, so what's involved? That was the most common question when I asked individuals, would you consider being our district opportunities for youth chair? What's involved? What are the timelines? What are your expectations? Nothing is better than a short role definition to be able to give that to a potential candidate. Give clear expectations and reinforce the objectives of the role. I've seen job descriptions, I've seen role descriptions, I've seen committee descriptions outline the various detailed and micromanaged areas within the role. But general objectives of the role sometimes are overlooked. So what are the objectives of the Diabetes Awareness Chair in a district? Are they to file a report at every cabinet meeting? Are they to be in attendance at every diabetes breakfast? No, the objective is to raise awareness about the illness and about what can be done by Lions and by individuals with Lions to assist. If that objective is also defined, people can embody that mission. So it's not tasks, it's the objectives, the mission statement, if you will, of each role and responsibility. And always remember to explain and discuss the process of transition. How are we going to work together to get you up and running and to ensure that I won't be saying, sayonara, best of luck. And that's the kind of thing that is very much needed as part of the selection process. Okay, can we turn to the next slide, please? Development. So now, we did with the assessment, which is take a look at the role. We looked at the candidates. What are their assets, their liabilities, various demands and discussions and possibilities. Now let's look at development. One key area that Lions Clubs International is indeed providing a great deal of resource, attention, and time is that of mentoring. The role of the mentor and the mentee. So essentially, a mentor will gradually provide in an orderly fashion the information to a protege or mentee, as some call it, that will then acquire this information and will use it in their own personal development towards a particular objective. Now, you may not be the person for the task, and the reason for that is the mentor and mentee relationship is a very personal one. If an individual has a passion and they've identified with another individual who has that same passion, and that is indeed the role that they wish to aspire to and to be your successor or the successor of the person in that particular responsibility, then that relationship may be better than that between the one who holds the responsibility and the new individual candidate. One of the important aspects is to set a clear outline of that training process. Itemize it, recognize it, set timelines, establish benchmarks, listen as much as you speak, because the person will learn as much, if not more, from asking a question and receiving an answer than being provided information which they do not yet need or feel relevant to their development. One thing for sure, welcome any additions and revisions to the training based on the candidate's needs. Remember I said that candidates come to the opportunity with assets and some potential challenges. You may need to reorient or provide additional training as regards those specific candidate needs. But the mentoring and the training process is very much a necessity in the transition. Seems obvious, but too many times a person assumes a role and then has to go digging as to what was left behind. I believe strongly that it's the role of one individual to provide that information and to provide that leadership in the training of the other. Always be open to a very different approach to the task. This is not to say that everything is rewritten. It is just that maybe meeting on a regular time schedule is not ideal. Maybe meeting subsequent to another meeting or just meeting casually over coffee may be a better approach. So always be open to a different approach to the mentoring process. Let's take a look at the next slide, and it talks about those aspects of the development training. First of all, we have resources for almost everything from either Lions Clubs International, but especially from Lions University and the USA-Canada Lions Leadership Forum. Evaluate those resources, identify those appropriate to the training process by selecting the proper training materials that will complement the mentor-mentee training. Set a schedule and keep to it. Too often one says, we'll learn all of this by the end of June next year, and then you'll take over the role. I think a little more detailed management on a schedule for the training always pays dividends, especially in the transition from one person to another. Now, show your approach to that role, but let the person bring their own style to it. So you may have some training aspects that are going to ask an individual to assume a certain style. Effective listening may be quite foreign to some individuals, but it's a very important technique for them to accomplish and build their relationship with others. So maybe they have a different way of being effective in their listening and their communications. It's a very difficult thing to do at times when you feel that what the printed materials suggest appear to be the be-all and end-all. Also, along the way, begin to delegate certain aspects as part of the development and the training. If one assumes a role, then partner with that individual. Take that individual along for various functions that relate to either the committee functions or the district cabinet functions. Matter of fact, if somebody aspires for being zone chair, then wouldn't it be appropriate for that person to attend most, if not all, cabinet meetings that they can attend to in the year leading to their desire to become zone chair? That experience and delegating certain aspects to that individual, if possible, not only reporting on the particular committee, but in providing summary information about the developments in that particular area. It would be great. Training, public speaking, those aspects, that's very important. Let's turn to slide 18 here, which is basically we're going to speak about the last of these four processes. So we started by developing the role, assessing it, looking at the candidates, making a selection, and developing the individual. Transition. I am the immediate past district governor this year for District A15. As immediate past district governor, I can advise you that it was very difficult to let go. It's difficult to let go because in a year as governor, you seem to not have had all the time you needed to do what you needed to do. But if your transition has been mentored and developed, then you can be comfortable in the knowledge that the person is prepared to undertake the role, bring their unique side to it, and indeed accomplish those accomplishments that maybe you didn't have an opportunity to. You must establish a transition point in advance. If you suggest, in the case where it is a variable time period or a particular time period that can be negotiated with the district or in the individual, that's fine. We all know the governor comes on board on the 1st of July, well actually after the last day of the convention when they're sworn in as governor. But up until that time, it doesn't mean that the vice district governor doesn't assume certain aspects of it. They understand the transition point, may even lead a cabinet meeting, whether beginning and or during the governor's term. That essentially allows the person responsible for the development of the individual to evaluate their preparedness. It's always important to take that evaluation and to kind of have a final question and answer round table, maybe even go out for dinner, suggest where things are, where you had hoped them to be, not as an indication of where you wish they take it to, because that should have happened as part of the development process between you and your successor, but to clear the air and to wish them well with ongoing support. You need to, as anyone in a particular role or responsibility, you need to release yourself from the role. You need to be consciously releasing yourself from the role. But you should always be there as a welcome shoulder, welcome ear to their concerns and their issues. So the transition portion is very difficult, but if done well, and if all of the other parts of the process were done well, then the individual will hit the ground running, will build on the foundation that you and others have set before, and at that point, you will feel the individual succeeding you, will feel comfortable that they have the knowledge, ability, training, and support to accomplish their goals. So let's just, at this time, I'm going to open it up for a few questions before I close. So let's take a quick review of our objectives then, if we could. On slide, yeah. So we want to establish a process. Well, we talked about these steps. The process is what it is. Flexible. Yes, it's flexible because when you go and select a candidate, you must be very objective. You must look at all aspects of it. There's nothing rigid about the process. Review those resources in your training and in your transition. Make sure that you support and that transition exists, and that your transition options are essentially, one, to release with support or to encourage the individual to undertake this mission on their own. So are there any questions?
I see AJ has a question here for you. Denny, can we make the Lions University bachelor and master's degrees a requirement for the higher roles within Lions? That would be nice, wouldn't it?
I think so. I'm trying to follow this because I'm also looking at the questions, Terry. Maybe I shouldn't.
Oh, that's good. I just wondered if there was something in that area when you make out a survey. What might be one of the questions? Have you completed some of the bachelor or master's degrees?
Well, you know, what we're developing here, and I'm not hopefully speaking out of turn, but I think Lions University is developing a curriculum and a product that if undertaken by any individual in the leadership of their clubs or higher roles, or even as a committee chair within a club, if they recognize value in these sessions, however many they take, whether they graduate or they don't graduate in a degree or not, the fact is that we've put this forward. It's another resource, and it is a resource that doesn't take too much time and embodies and encapsulates a lot of what our clubs are asking for.
I see another question, Denny, and from David. If prerequisites are enshrined in our bylaws, can they be ignored or must the bylaws be changed?
Oh boy, now that's a big one.
Well, you opened the can of worms on that one.
When I suggested that they may be overlooked, I don't believe I meant bylaws. I just meant that there's traditions. There are traditions within institutions that suggest that only a past district governor may hold XYZ committee chair. Realize this, that there are experts all among us, and that we should probably not overlook a defined requisite unless it needs to be changed, and if it does, then there must be an argument for that change. And if that change, it's always the case that if you can convince the majority of the people that something needs to be changed, then that is what we're all about. And if we feel, if as an individual feel that a certain requisite in a bylaw is not appropriate, then we should make every effort to have it reviewed. Or we should simply understand that there is a predefined need and understanding for it. There are obviously constitutional and bylaws, constitutional elements that just cannot be changed. They cascade from one level to another. And those are not the ones I'm talking about playing with. But I am talking about when somebody says that only a past district governor may hold the services for children chair. There's no indeed rationale for that. And that's when we can say, no, I will bypass that because guess what? I have a member of Lions Quest that wishes to undertake that particular role and responsibility in terms of services for children. I think, and this might be my opinion, and then I might take it on the chin should I make that decision outside of the traditional norms.
Leanne also has a question on should you use evaluation sheets upon completing training to know your own strengths and weaknesses?
Possibly if you have those now, when you're suggesting completed training, some venues that Lions Clubs International as well as here provide, you're not going to get the evaluation sheets. You're not privy to that information. And so if you're doing the training, you can create an evaluation sheet or you can create a test, a quiz, as we do within Lions University, and that gives you an assessment of the person's capabilities. Sure, I'm not talking about personality tests. I'm not talking about, like I said, for your IT manager, some kind of Rogers test for analytical aptitude. The kind of testing and the kind of knowledge that you want to gain about the candidate's capabilities are sometimes subtle. They sometimes come from other challenges. Let's say you need a position filled that has a high public speaking responsibility in the role. Then an individual that is unable to speak in public or has yet to overcome that would be best counseled to get training because it's an integral part of the position they wish to hold. These kinds of assessments go on all the time. If you're going to write an evaluation and have many people do that, well, there may not be a lot of candidates wanting to be so scrutinized. I think it's a very personal matter, and yeah, I'm going all over the board on this one, but what I'm saying, as far as I can see, is the evaluation happens all the time. It happens, and when you're sitting down and looking objectively at a candidate, that's when you bring it all back together. I don't know if I answered that.
I know there's another question here going back into your comment about the zone chair. Several people in my club disagreed that I was not president before zone chair, but the district governor offered it to me and members were upset. Was it right?
Was it right?
Was it right for her to be zone chair even though she hadn't served as president of the Lions Club?
I hope that's not a question, because if it is a question, I'd have to say yes. It was right. But then again, one could measure it objectively later and say, well, no, it was because of the capabilities of the individual. You know, I've got a member in one of the clubs in our district that was president of their Optimus Club 3 times before the club folded. I feel that he must have inherited some knowledge and capability from that. And at the last minute, the person decided not to be a candidate for position of zone chair, primarily because of the pressures that he had not been a president of his own club, and that wasn't going to happen for 2 years. So I like to see people that stand up, but yes, we have to evaluate their capabilities and how that fits within what our needs are with district leadership and management.
Thank you, Denny. I'm not sure there's too many more questions in here. One question, is there a course handout, notes with this course?
I often wondered that. I do have something, but Lion Bud, if I might ask, would you, is the PowerPoint
Unmuted.
for download?
Is the what? Say that
Or
again.
the recording only?
It's just recording
Is
only.
the PowerPoint presentation available? Recording only. Okay.
It's just recording only, but if someone wanted the PowerPoint, Wendy Kane has a library of all the PowerPoints, and so they could email her, and I'm sure she could send a copy of it to them. I have all the masters' PowerPoints on file, and I could do the same thing. I could email it to anybody who wanted that. So it is available if they either go through me or through Wendy, and they can get a copy of that. I found myself, I was muted there for a little while, and I wanted to jump in on the the gal that was appointed zone chair before she was club president. And we, in a lot of areas, especially here, I'm in Illinois, and in a lot of districts in Illinois, it's difficult to complete all the cabinet appointments, and it seems like zone chairs, a good zone chair, is hard to find in many areas. And I know in my travels as an international director, in many cases at a district convention, there were actually contests elected. They were electing zone chairs at a district convention. It wasn't an appointment by the district governor. It was actually an elected position in particular districts. So people were actually running for that position. Here, it's a little different. In the Midwest, it's very difficult to fulfill all of the zone chair positions on the district level. So, you don't want to fill it with just anybody, but if you have a particular person who has a lot of potential, a candidate who has a lot of potential for further development and is willing and able to fulfill that position of zone chair, even though they have not been a club president, by all means go for it. There's nothing in the Lions Club's international constitution and bylaws that states that a zone chair must first hold the position of a club president. There's nothing, there's no requirement on the international level for that. So if you can find a non-president that will fulfill that position and do the job, then by all means go for it. And I agree with you, Denny. It was the right thing to do.
Len, Bud, in Canada, at least my experience from discussing this with other multiples as well as other districts, we aspire for individuals who present themselves as candidate for election. Mm-hmm. Now, in our district in particular, a candidate for election must have been a president or be a president, have been a president at the time they assume the role. But that's for a candidate to be submitted officially 30 days in advance of the election. If no candidates are found, then our fallback position is the district governor will attempt to appoint or request an individual to hold a position, and then that need no longer applies.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
One comment, if I could make, Denny and Bud, and to the group that, in the International Association, when you go into countries like India and Japan, it's a privilege to serve in those positions, but when we get into North America, it seems to be a little less of a privilege to do that. And I've often wondered, maybe suggested to the leadership department of LCI, that we may consider putting the secretary's name on that list of qualifications for a zone chairman, because we've got some great secretaries that necessarily haven't been a president, but really do have the skills to step forward in a leadership role.
Agreed here.
Yeah, that's a good idea. When we were was a faculty member for the District Governor-elect Training School at the International Convention, succession planning was a course that we taught on occasion. And I always stress the fact that when you are a district governor and have the opportunity to travel around and visit as many clubs as you possibly can within your district, it's one of your main responsibilities to try to identify potential candidates for the district cabinet level, not necessarily trying to find a particular position or a cabinet position, because during your year, your cabinet is already fulfilled during your year as district governor. But if you can find, while you're a district governor during your travels, someone that did a fantastic job leading a service project, or a membership chairman that did a fantastic job in the club or on the club level or something. If you can identify some potential leaders like that you could pass those names on to your vice governors for consideration on the cabinet level, that's a plus for your district. That's how you find potential future leaders on the district level, by going around and seeing who's doing the job. Anything else we have there, Terry?
No more questions right here. Just a minute here now.
All right, I'm looking to see if anybody has any hands. I don't have any hands up, so
Well, if I may, Lion Bud, I just want to close by saying thank you to you and International Director, past International Director Mark Miller for putting this program and lectures and seminars together. I mean, I think Lions University really complements that experience that we all receive by going to the USA-Canada Forum. And it really presents a very focused, direct, and summary approach to training all of our clubs or district officers and beyond. I mean, I really want to thank you guys for having the vision to put this together and to hold it together. And I just want to say thank you for allowing me to be a part of it. And I'm going to pass this back to you, and thank you once again.
all right. Thank you, Lion Denny, and we appreciate your willingness to take part as a faculty member. I know this is your second course on the master's level, and we welcome you back at any time in the future. I know Lion Terry is going to be lining up some presenters, some faculty members for the doctoral program, which is going to kick off, I think, in Grand Rapids, and so we're looking forward to that event. And the bachelor program and the master's program have been received very well, and we anticipate the doctoral program to do the same. So we thank you again for participating, Denny, and hopefully run across you, our paths run across again very soon. And we'll move on. This is the discussion board, and I encourage, if you want to continue conversations, you can go to the lionsforum.org website and click on that discussion board marked by the green tab there, and follow this course along, and you can join in on future discussion there on the website. I'd like to remind you of future webinars coming up. Next Tuesday, a week from tonight, we have a bachelor's elective class, 129, the Lions Clubs International Foundation. So we'll be having LCIF next week. And the week after that will be an elective course for the master's program on motivation. And again, as a reminder, all courses are 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And you can register for either one of those classes on the lionsuniversity.org calendar webpage. Would also like to remind you that the quiz is now available for this particular course, and you can get to the quiz by going to the lionsuniversity.org/masters/ the 202 course, and go on there and go to that Mark as Completed tab at the bottom of the page that we talked about earlier, and then you'll go to the next unit, which is the quiz. And you can take the quiz, and when you're completed, hit completed, submit your answers, and then you'll get your results immediately. I'd also like to thank again Lion Denny for participating, and thank everyone for joining us on the webinar tonight. And we hope that you are back on Lions University next week and the weeks to come in future classes. And I'd like to remind you to log out this evening at this time. You can go in on the column on the right-hand side, on the panel on the right-hand side of your screen there, and go up to File, click on File, and log out as you leave. And that would be great, and we hope to see you again soon. Thank you again for attending.